The distant echoes of battle reverberated through the sacred grounds of Beerus planet, a place where gods trained and legends were forged. The sky shimmered with an eerie blue glow as Broly, the once uncontrollable Saiyan warrior, stood before Whis, the angelic guide of Universe 7. His massive frame trembled with restrained power, his eyes burning with determination. "Teach me," he growled, his voice rough but earnest. Whis tilted his head, his ever-present smile widening. My, someone's eager. "Very well, Broly. But remember, training under me is no simple feat." Broly had come seeking control over his rage, his power, and his destiny. After the catastrophic battle on Earth, he had wandered the cosmos, haunted by the destruction he'd caused. It was Goku who suggested he seek Whis' guidance, believing the angel could help harness his potential. Now, under the watchful gaze of Whis and the disinterested yawns of Beerus, Broly prepared to embark on a journey that would test his limits. The training began with Whis' signature staff twirling in the air, creating a spatial distortion. "Catch it," he said simply. Broly lunged, his muscles coiling like springs, but the staff flickered out of reach. Again and again, he tried, each time missing by a fraction. Sweat beaded on his brow as frustration mounted. Whis chuckled. "Speed isn't just about raw power, Broly. It's about precision, timing, grace." Broly clenched his fists, his aura flaring green for a moment before he forced it down. He wouldn't lose control. Not this time. Days turned into weeks. Broly learned to move with fluidity, his brutish strength tempered by Whis' teachings. He could now snatch the staff mid-air, his reflexes sharpened to near perfection. But Whis wasn't done. "Now, let's see how you fare against a real challenge," he said, gesturing to Beerus, who had been napping atop a floating rock. The god of destruction cracked one eye open. "You want me to fight this brute?" he grumbled. "Consider it a warm-up," Whis replied cheerfully. Beerus sighed and floated down, stretching lazily. Broly tensed, his muscles rippling as he recalled their last encounter, how effortlessly Beerus had swatted him aside. But this time was different. This time, he was ready. With a roar, Broly exploded into his Super Saiyan form, golden energy crackling around him. Beerus smirked. "Let's make this interesting." In an instant, he vanished, reappearing behind Broly with a swift chop to the neck. Broly barely dodged, countering with a crushing elbow that Beerus deflected with a flick of his wrist. The battle escalated. Broly's fists became blurs, each strike carrying enough force to shatter mountains. Beerus danced around them, his movements effortless, his purple aura flaring occasionally to block or redirect an attack. "You've improved," Beerus admitted, landing a sharp kick to Broly's ribs that sent him skidding back. Broly grinned through the pain, his body thrumming with energy. "Not enough," he muttered. Then, with a deafening shout, his golden hair transformed into a radiant blue, his power surging to new heights. Super Saiyan Blue. Whis clapped his hands. "Marvelous. You've finally tapped into godly ki." Beerus' eyes gleamed with interest. "Now we're talking." He lunged, his fist coated in destructive energy. Broly met him head-on, their collision sending shockwaves across the planet. The ground fissured beneath them as they traded blows, each impact resonating like thunder. Broly's newfound control allowed him to match Beerus' speed, their exchanges becoming a dazzling display of power and skill. But Beerus was still a god. With a sudden burst of energy, he unleashed a Hakai sphere, the orb of annihilation humming ominously. Broly's eyes widened, but instead of dodging, he raised his hands, channeling his ki into a massive energy blast. The two attacks collided, creating a blinding explosion that forced Whis to raise a protective barrier. When the smoke cleared, Broly stood panting, his blue aura flickering. Beerus brushed dust off his shoulder. "Not bad. But you've got a long way to go before you can challenge me seriously." Broly nodded, his chest heaving but his spirit unbroken. This was only the beginning. The conflict was set, Broly's quest for mastery, Beerus' reluctant mentorship, and Whis' enigmatic guidance. The stage was prepared for a saga of growth, rivalry, and the relentless pursuit of strength. And as the sun set over Beerus' planet, casting long shadows over the battlefield, one thing was certain: the next clash would shake the heavens themselves. The training grounds of Whis shimmered under the twin suns of Beerus' planet as Broly, now clad in the unmistakable aura of Super Saiyan Blue, squared off against the god of destruction himself. Sweat beaded on Broly's forehead, his muscles tense with anticipation. Beerus smirked, tail flicking lazily. "Let's see if Whis' lessons paid off, monkey," he taunted, raising a clawed hand. Before Broly could react, Beerus vanished, reappearing behind him with a devastating chop to the spine. Broly roared, skidding across the crystalline terrain, but twisted mid-fall, firing a volley of energy blasts that forced Beerus to weave erratically. The battle was interrupted by a sudden tremor, a ship piercing the atmosphere, its hull scorched and smoking. It crashed nearby, and from the wreckage emerged a figure Goku and Vegeta recognized instantly, Frieza, his golden form flickering like a dying flame. But something was wrong. His eyes glowed an unnatural violet, and his grin was wider, more unhinged. Well, Frieza crooned, if it isn't my favorite Saiyan pests, and Broly. How delightful. Whis narrowed his eyes. That energy. It's not just Frieza anymore. Before anyone could react, Frieza lunged, his speed unnatural, fist connecting with Broly's jaw hard enough to send him spiraling into a distant rock formation. Beerus growled, stepping forward. You're not welcome here, Frieza, Frieza chuckled, flexing his fingers. Oh, but I've brought a gift, he snapped his fingers, and the ground split open, revealing a swarm of biomechanical creatures, their bodies shifting between organic and metallic, their shrieks piercing the air. Meet my new army, courtesy of a mutual acquaintance. Goku and Vegeta exchanged glances. The heaters? Vegeta guessed, already powering up. Frieza's grin widened. Clever monkey. They provided the tech, and I provided the power. A fair trade, wouldn't you say? Without warning, the creatures surged forward, forcing the warriors into action. Goku teleported behind one, driving a fist through its chest, only for the wound to seal instantly. They regenerate? He yelled, barely dodging a swipe from another. Broly, shaking off the earlier hit, roared back into the fray, his blue aura flaring. He grabbed two creatures and slammed them together, their bodies exploding in a shower of sparks. But for every one he destroyed, 3 more took its place. Whis, observing from a distance, frowned. This isn't just Frieza's doing. Someone else is pulling the strings. Amid the chaos, Frieza seized his chance, darting toward Broly with a key blade aimed for his heart. But Beerus intercepted, catching Frieza's wrist with a snarl. You've overstayed your welcome. Frieza's eyes gleamed. Have I? Suddenly, his free hand glowed violet, and a shockwave of corrupted godly energy erupted, sending Beerus flying. Even Whis staggered. That power, it's akin to a god of destructions, but twisted, he murmured. Goku, realizing the stakes, shouted to Vegeta. We need to work together. Vegeta scoffed but nodded. They launched a synchronized assault, Goku weaving through the creatures with instant transmission while Vegeta bombarded them with pinpoint ki blasts. Meanwhile, Broly, tapping into Whis' training, focused his energy into a massive sphere, hurling it into the heart of the swarm. The explosion decimated dozens, but the remaining creatures merged, forming a colossal monstrosity with Frieza's laughter echoing from its core. You fools, Frieza's voice boomed, you can't win. This power is beyond you. The merged creature lashed out, its tendrils whipping toward them. Beerus, recovering, unleashed a Hakai blast, but the creature absorbed it, growing even larger. Whis finally stepped forward, his staff glowing. Enough. With a single tap, time froze, but only for a moment. The creature writhed, resisting. Whis' eyes widened. It's adapting to my abilities? The situation was dire. Broly, panting, clenched his fists. We have to find the source. Goku gritted his teeth. But where? Then, a familiar voice crackled over their calms. Hey, morons, need a hand? It was Bulma, her tone exasperated. I've traced the signal controlling those things. There's a ship in orbit, that's your target. Vegeta smirked. About time you did something useful, woman. With a new objective, the team rallied. Goku and Vegeta fused their energies, creating a diversion with a massive Kamehameha Gallic gun combo, while Broly and Beerus charged the creature head-on. Whis, using his staff, opened a portal beneath the monstrosity, hurling it into a pocket dimension, but not before Frieza's form detached, darting toward the orbiting ship. He's escaping, Broly shouted. The battle wasn't over. The real enemy was still out there, and Frieza was just the pawn. As the dust settled, Whis turned to them, his expression grave. Whoever is behind this has access to powers that rival the gods. We must prepare for the worst. Broly, still glowing blue, nodded firmly. Then we train harder. The screen faded to black, the threat looming larger than ever. The training grounds of Beerus planet shimmered under the distant stars as Broly, drenched in sweat, steadied his breathing. His muscles ached from the relentless drills Whis had put him through, but his eyes burned with determination. Across from him, Beerus cracked his knuckles, a smirk playing on his lips. Let's see if you've finally learned control, Broly, he taunted. With a roar, Broly erupted into Super Saiyan Blue, his aura flaring like a sapphire inferno. The ground trembled as he lunged, fists blazing. Beerus dodged with lazy grace, countering with a swift elbow to Broly's ribs. The Saiyan staggered but grinned. This was progress. Whis observed from the sidelines, his staff tapping rhythmically against the floor. Good, good. But power alone won't defeat an opponent like Beerus, he chimed. Broly gritted his teeth, recalling Whis' lessons, precision over brute force. He feinted left, then twisted mid-air, aiming a spinning kick at Beerus' temple. The god of destruction barely raised a hand to block, but Broly's follow-up punch connected, sending Beerus skidding back. For the first time, surprise flickered in Beerus' eyes. Not bad, he admitted. The battle escalated, energy waves colliding in deafening explosions. Broly pushed harder, his movements sharper, but Beerus was toying with him. With a sudden burst of speed, Beerus vanished, reappearing behind Broly. A single finger tapped his spine, and Broly's vision blurred as he was sent crashing into a mountain. Rocks rained down as he struggled to rise. Whis floated over, concern etching his features. You're improving, but you're still too predictable, he murmured. Broly coughed, frustration boiling in his chest. Then what am I missing? He demanded. Before Whis could answer, the sky darkened. A vortex of crimson energy tore open, and out stepped a figure cloaked in shadows, Frieza, his golden form gleaming, but his eyes. They were wrong. Pitch black, veins of purple energy pulsing beneath his skin. Well, Frieza crooned, his voice dripping with malice. I couldn't let you all have fun without me, Beerus sighed. This again? But Whis stiffened, his usual calm shattered. Something's different. His energy. It's corrupted. Frieza laughed, flexing his claws. Oh, Whis, always the perceptive one. Let's just say I've embraced a darker mentor. With a snap of his fingers, the ground erupted. Tendrils of shadow lashed out, ensnaring Whis and Beerus in an inky grip. Broly barely dodged, his heart pounding. Frieza's power had skyrocketed. This wasn't the Frieza they knew. Who's pulling your strings? Broly growled. Frieza's grin widened. Why don't you ask him yourself? The shadows coalesced into a towering figure, eyes burning like dying stars. Zamasu? Whis gasped, disbelief coloring his voice. But this wasn't the Zamasu of their timeline, this was a remnant, a fragment of the corrupted Kai who had merged with the universe itself. You were fools to think you could erase me, Zamasu hissed. I am justice. I am inevitable. Broly's blood ran cold. Zamasu's presence was suffocating, his energy warping reality itself. Beerus strained against the shadows, his divine power flickering. Whis, we need to. A tendril clamped over his mouth. Zamasu raised a hand, and Broly felt his body lock up, his muscles screaming in protest. You are strong, Broly, Zamasu mused. But strength without purpose is meaningless. Join me, and together, we will purge this flawed existence. Broly's mind raced. This wasn't just a fight, it was a war for reality itself. He glanced at Whis, who gave the slightest nod. A plan formed. With a roar, Broly channeled every ounce of his power, his aura exploding in a blinding burst. The shadows recoiled, and for a split second, Zamasu faltered. It was enough. Whis shattered his bonds, his staff glowing with divine light. Now, Broly, he shouted. Broly lunged, his fist aimed at Zamasu's core. But Frieza intercepted, their fists colliding in a shockwave that split the sky. You're not ruining my fun, Frieza sneered. Behind him, Zamasu raised his hand, a sphere of annihilation forming. Broly's heart pounded, this was it. He had one chance. With a desperate cry, he tapped into something deeper, something primal. His hair flickered between blue and green, his body trembling with unstable power. The explosion that followed lit up the cosmos. When the smoke cleared, Broly stood alone, panting. Frieza was gone. Zamasu was gone. But so were Whis and Beerus. The planet was silent. Broly fell to his knees, his hands shaking. Had he won? Or had he just doomed them all? Then, a whisper in the wind. Broly. His head snapped up. Whis' voice, faint but clear. Find the oracle fish. It's the only way now. Broly's fists clenched. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The air crackled with energy as Broly stood opposite Beerus, his muscles coiled tight beneath his shimmering blue aura. The training under Whis had sharpened his instincts, refined his power, but now, facing the god of destruction himself, was the true test. His breath came steady, his emerald eyes locked onto Beerus, who lounged lazily on a floating rock, tail flicking with amusement. "You've come a long way, Broly," Beerus mused, stretching his arms. "But let's see if you can make me break a sweat." Without warning, Broly lunged, his fist a blur of blue light. Beerus sidestepped effortlessly, but Broly twisted midair, his knee slamming upward. Beerus blocked with his forearm, the impact sending a shockwave through the battlefield. The ground shattered beneath them as Beerus smirked. Not bad. But predictable. He vanished, reappearing behind Broly with a chop aimed at his neck. Broly barely dodged, rolling forward and retaliating with a ki blast that forced Beerus to deflect it skyward, where it exploded like a supernova. Broly didn't let up. Channeling Whis' teachings, he moved with fluid precision, feinting left before darting right, his fists a storm of relentless strikes. Beerus countered each blow, but for the first time, his usual boredom faded, replaced by intrigue. "Humph. You're adapting," he admitted, catching Broly's wrist and flipping him overhead. Broly twisted, landing in a crouch before launching a point-blank energy wave. Beerus crossed his arms, taking the blast head-on, his shoes skidding back through the dirt. The dust cleared, revealing Beerus's grin. "All right. Let's get serious." His aura erupted, dark purple energy swirling around him as he powered up. The ground trembled, and Broly braced himself, feeling the sheer pressure of a god of destruction's full might. Beerus shot forward, a violet streak, and this time, Broly couldn't react fast enough. Beerus's elbow smashed into his ribs, sending him crashing through a mountain. Gritting his teeth, Broly forced himself up, his Super Saiyan blue flickering. He had to push further. Drawing on the depths of his rage, controlled now, honed, his aura flared brighter, tinged with emerald. He roared, his power surging beyond its limits, his muscles swelling as he ascended into a new peak. Beerus's eyes widened slightly. Interesting. They clashed again, this time with world-shaking force. Fist met fist, shockwaves ripping through the landscape. Broly ducked under a sweeping kick, countering with a spinning backhand that grazed Beerus's cheek. The god chuckled, wiping a speck of blood. "You actually hit me." His playful tone vanished. "Now it's my turn." Beerus unleashed a barrage of Hakai-infused strikes, each one capable of erasing existence. Broly weaved between them, his instincts screaming, but one grazed his shoulder, searing his flesh. He hissed but refused to falter. Digging deep, he tapped into Whis' lessons, Ultra Instinct's echoes, and his movements became sharper, more reflexive. He vanished before Beerus's next strike landed, reappearing above him with a double-handed hammer blow that sent the god plummeting into the earth. The battlefield fell silent. Broly panted, his body aching, but he knew it wasn't over. A slow clap echoed as Beerus rose from the crater, dusting off his fur. "Impressive. But let's end this." He raised a hand, a sphere of destructive energy forming. Broly braced himself, this was it. With a final roar, he channeled every ounce of his power, his aura exploding into a blinding radiance as he met Beerus's attack head-on. The collision lit up the sky, the shockwave tearing the planet apart. When the light faded, both stood battered but unbroken. Beerus smirked. "Not bad, Broly. Not bad at all." Broly grinned back, knowing he'd finally proven himself. The battle was over, but the fire in his eyes burned brighter than ever. The air crackled with energy as Broly, now clad in the shimmering aura of Super Saiyan Blue, squared off against Beerus, the god of destruction. The battlefield, a shattered wasteland from their earlier clashes, trembled under the weight of their power. Broly's muscles tensed, his breath steady but fierce, while Beerus smirked, his tail flicking with amusement. "You've improved, monkey," Beerus taunted, "but let's see if you can handle my full power." Broly didn't waste a second. With a roar, he lunged, his fist cloaked in blue fire, aiming for Beerus's gut. The god of destruction sidestepped effortlessly, countering with a swift elbow to Broly's spine. The Saiyan grunted but twisted midair, swinging his leg in a devastating arc. Beerus blocked, but the force sent him skidding back, his feet carving trenches into the ground. "Not bad," Beerus admitted, cracking his neck. "But you're still too slow." The battle escalated in a blur of motion. Broly unleashed a barrage of ki blasts, each one detonating like a supernova, but Beerus weaved through them, his movements almost lazy in their precision. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, Beerus appeared behind Broly, his palm glowing violet. "Hakai," he murmured. Broly's instinct screamed danger, he barely dodged, the erasure technique grazing his shoulder, searing his skin. Gritting his teeth, he channeled Whis' training, focusing his ki into a single point. His aura flared brighter, his muscles swelling with newfound power. Beerus's eyes widened. You're adapting? Broly didn't answer. Instead, he vanished, reappearing above Beerus with a double-handed hammer strike. The impact sent shockwaves through the planet, splitting the earth beneath them. Beerus staggered, his smirk faltering for the first time. Fine, he growled, his aura erupting into a swirling maelstrom of destruction. Let's end this. The two collided in a cataclysmic explosion of light and sound. Fists clashed at speeds beyond comprehension, each blow shaking the heavens. Broly's body screamed in protest, his limits pushed to the brink, but he refused to yield. Memories flashed, his harsh upbringing, his rage, and now, Whis' patient guidance. He wasn't just fighting for strength anymore, he was fighting for control, for purpose. Then came the defining moment. Beerus, panting slightly, charged his ultimate technique, a sphere of annihilation swirling in his palm. This is it, Broly. Let's see if you can survive. Broly, battered but unbroken, clenched his fists. Instead of dodging, he did the unimaginable, he reached out, his own ki flaring blue and green, intertwining. I won't run, he growled. The energies collided, a deafening silence before the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, light. A blinding, all-consuming radiance swallowed the battlefield. When it faded, both warriors stood, their auras flickering. Beerus's attack had been neutralized, but Broly's body was failing. He dropped to one knee, his form reverting to base. Beerus stared, then chuckled. You actually did it. He offered a hand. I'll admit, you've earned my respect. The aftermath was profound. Broly, once a weapon of destruction, had proven that even the wildest power could be tempered. Whis, observing from afar, smiled. The balance shifts, he mused. Beerus, though reluctant, acknowledged Broly's growth, hinting at future training. Across the universe, whispers spread, of a new force, one that could bridge the gap between gods and mortals. As Broly stood, his body aching but his spirit unbroken, he looked to the stars. The battle was over, but his journey had just begun. The universe would never be the same.